Shavua Tov, good vach. Welcome back to the third session of Destinations. Hope everyone had an unbelievable break and a wonderful Hanukkah. Just this past week, Klal Yisrael had a big simcha. 92,000 people gathered together in New York for the biggest event, but there were many others around the world, including many of us, that celebrated our family simcha, some of us in B'nai Omah, for an unbelievable event. The idea of celebrating for someone else's simcha, being able to rejoice in someone else's happiness, even though it's not you that's going through it, is a human experience that animals, plants, and minerals don't have. In fact, one of the Sheva Brachas that we have highlights this idea. Rashi tells us in Ksuvos that the bracha shakol bar lechvodo, everything was created for God's honor. It's not a bracha for the chassan and kala, but it's a bracha for all those that have gathered to rejoice in the simcha of the chassan and kala as they mimic, emulate God in being able to take care of others, like a Kadosh Baruch Hu took care of Adam and Chava at the chasana, and it brings memories and connotes a kavod for Hashem, shakol bar lechvodo. So we rejoice in the simchas of Klal Yisrael. We're able to rejoice in the happiness of others. And we also recognize at a time of Klal Yisrael's great heights and achievements, as the Rosh Hashiva of Berkowitz from Aish Torah mentioned at the Siyum Shas in B'nai Omah, there's so many Yidden, so many Jews that have never heard of Talmud Yerushalmi, let alone Talmud Bavli. They've never heard of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kriya Shema. And as we rejoice in the simcha of others, we're always reminded that things are not complete. And as we sit in yeshiva all day and learn Torah and grow in the best possible way, steiging, we want to take the beauty of Hashem's Torah and spread it to others in any capacity that we can. And so far in this seminar, we've had classes on Emunah. The first week, evidence of Hashem's existence, which talked about Hashem. Then Ramati Berger, a class on forget about God, who am I, understanding how people relate to themselves, how they relate to Hashem, what they're looking for in life. Today's class continues the curriculum as we get to Torah Shebichsav, one of the greatest evidence of Hashem's existence and the belief in Torah, Maimon Har Sinai. And tonight's speaker, Rav Meir Kehen, is a beloved Rebbe in Aish Torah. He gives one of the biggest shiurim of the beginner's Gemara shiur with the whole system and building guys' skills up to appreciate Gemara textually as well as to appreciate the beauty of Torah. He is someone who stands for the things that he believes in, and he's very clear, and he's very loving, very passionate, and very logical. And he's a true Rebbe that loves his Talmidim and cares for them and is there for them. And it's a big honor to call upon Rabbi Kehen to speak on Maimon Har Sinai, National Revelation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rabbi Rosen. Big honor to be here. It was such a wonderful program. Okay, so tonight we're going to be discussing the following topic. You know, as you begin your involvement in Kiruv and outreach work, so you will find that almost instantaneously a secular person or an unaffiliated person will be very enchanted with the beauty of Yiddishkeit. That's very, very quick. The beauty of Yiddishkeit, the seichel in Yiddishkeit, and they will be pulled towards it. One of the problems you'll confront after that initial confrontation with beauty is that they begin to wonder the following question. And this is the question we're going to be dealing with tonight. The question goes as follows. Judaism is beautiful. Judaism is wise. However, if I buy into this whole Judaism thing, what I'm also going to have to accept is that God appeared in front of 3 million people on a mountaintop and gave a book. And that's a very hard thing to buy. Meaning, the fact that Judaism is wise, the fact that Judaism is beautiful, is something that the secular person will almost initially be attracted to. And that will pique their interest. But one of the questions that they begin to confront when they start learning a little bit more is that there's a book, and this book was given by God on Mount Sinai to 3 million people. And then they begin to wonder themselves the following question. I always thought of myself as an intellectual. I always thought of myself as a thinking person. I always thought of myself as a rational person, maybe as a philosophical person. Can I still be an intellectual, thinking, rational, philosophical person and buy into Judaism, thereby accepting that God appeared on a mountain in front of 3 million people? It just sounds very, 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 very hard to accept. But What we're trying to discuss tonight is what our response to that and how we will coach the newly acquainted person to Yiddishkeit on this particular approach. And Be'ez Hashem will come away with a very solid approach, explaining to them how they can deal with this particular question they have. If we were to maybe reframe the question a bit, reframe their question a bit, and it's important to reframe it for them. So the question would be something like this. Is this event at Mount Sinai, is it something that I can know occurred? Or is it something that I just have to believe or not believe? Again, is this event at Mount Sinai something that I can know happened? Or is it something that I just have to believe or not believe? That's the reframing of the question. Let's get a few definitions over here, make sure we're all on the same page. Can anyone here give me a definition of for knowledge? Anyone raise your hand, give me a definition for knowledge. How do you define knowledge? Yes. Yeah, very good. That's exactly how I would say. I would say that knowledge is a piece of evidence that a claim that I accept based on evidence. Yeah, a claim that I accept based on evidence. Good, excellent, fine. That's knowledge. Now, can anybody give me a definition of belief? Anyone? Belief? Anyone? Nobody. Yes.
Accepting something as true even though you can't prove it.
Very good. Yeah, I would say it like this. That a belief is when I is accepting of a claim despite lack of evidence. Despite lack of evidence. And we usually accept it because it's appealing or because we like it or because we want it. Yeah. So knowledge is a claim that we accept as true based on evidence. Arrows point to the direction, logic, evidence, that's knowledge. Belief is a claim that we accept despite lack of evidence. And so what we're really asking over here when we're discussing this question of Maimon Har Sinai is there enough evidence pointing the direction to Maimon Har Sinai that I can accept as knowledge that this event occurred, or do I simply need to accept it or reject it due to lack of evidence? Are we following this so far? Let's try to take this a bit farther, because even though knowledge is always based on evidence, a very important detail when it comes to knowledge is that even though knowledge is built on evidence, I never need 100% evidence to know anything. I never need 100% evidence to know anything. I'll give you an example. Has anyone in this room ever wondered if their mother was really their mother? Yeah? Yeah, there's always one. Yeah, okay, but you have to have a reason. Okay, okay. Most people are pretty convinced that their mother is their mother. In fact, it seems like everybody is. But I have a question for you. My question is, how do you know? How do you know, for example? Go ahead, Lemire. Yeah, you convinced? One of you. How do you know? Was it tested? Okay, it was okay. Fine. So first of all, you're not sure. But even if you were, I ask you a question. How do you know that this DNA test is accurate? Mistakes are made, A. And B is that maybe your mother so much wanted you to believe that you are her son that she paid off the lab technician. You don't know. Anyone else? How do you know your mother's your mother? Anyone? Baby pictures. Isn't it incredible? You're the one who said that. Isn't it incredible? Right, I got it. Yeah. Isn't it incredible that the baby she kidnapped look exactly like her and you? It's amazing. Yeah, it is pretty incredible. Wow. Anyone else?
I look like my siblings.
You look like your siblings. Yeah, she kidnapped the whole family. Anyone else? Yeah. You look like your parents. Yeah, that's right. It is pretty amazing. Out of all the babies she could have stolen, she stole one that looked like her. Bottom line is that none of you have 100% evidence that your mother is your mother. Yet, yeah, all of you know that she is. And the reason is like this, is that even though knowledge is built on evidence, you never need 100% evidence to know anything. And as long as, listen carefully to this, the alternative is unreasonable, you can accept the claim as knowledge, even if it's not 100%. Let me give you another one. How about this? None of you in this room know, for sure, that I'm not going to pull out a gun right now and kill you. Now, as I'm saying this, right, so you are getting slightly nervous, but you're all still sitting here. And I want to point out, this is probably the biggest decision that you ever made in your entire life, because you may never make it out. right? And you're still sitting here, right? You're still sitting here. So let's try to analyze why. None of you know for sure that I'm not going to pull out a gun. So what do you think? You're thinking things like this. You're thinking that, well, I mean, I don't think Rabbi Rosen's going to hire a guy who's going to shoot me. And I know he doesn't look like the type of guy that can use a gun. I mean, he doesn't really look very intelligent at all. I'm saying, I don't think he can really do, actually, it doesn't seem like he can do too much at all, right? You're trying to figure out, is that a reasonable claim, right? Is it reasonable? So even though you don't know for sure that I'm not going to pull out a gun and kill you, that seems like that's unreasonable. And therefore, even though you don't have 100% evidence, you know enough to put your life on the line. That I'm not going to kill you. Are we following this so far? Meaning, belief versus knowledge. Knowledge is always a claim that you'll accept because of evidence. Belief is a claim that you'll accept or reject because of lack of lack of evidence. But even knowledge doesn't need 100%. And you can know for an absolute fact enough that you're willing to put your life on the line, even though you don't have 100% evidence. How about this? I think probably everyone, or certainly almost everyone, came from Chutz La'aretz here. And I think most people came from Chutz La'aretz here. Now you flew in an airplane. Yeah, you flew in an airplane. Now you did not know when you got on that plane that it was not going to crash. You did not know. Yet you got on. And most healthy, normal people are not all that nervous on the flight. And everyone's got that thought, when that first little uh-oh, right? And then you quickly get over it, and you certainly don't watch any movies, I'm sure, but you learn Gemara, right? So, right, and you're okay for the rest of the flight, right? But I have a question. How were you able to be so calm, right? You did not know that plane was going to crash 100%, yet you were comfortable enough to snooze, to rest, you were comfortable enough to do that. The reason is because all of us know that in order to know, you don't have to have 100%. As long as the alternative is unreasonable, so I can accept a claim as true, even if I don't know 100%. Even once you landed, you may have breathed a bit of a sigh of relief, but I don't know why, because it's much less safe to get in the taxi to take you to your yeshiva than it was to fly from America. You understand? Then, especially in Israel, where the risk is actually quite high of being in a car accident. So these are jokes, really, and you're supposed to laugh a little bit. But I guess these types of things, I thought maybe aren't very funny. But okay. But the idea is that you nevertheless you got in that taxi or the Nesher or whatever it was, and you went. And of course, it could be maybe the thought crossed your mind, but you're willing to put your life on the line for something you didn't know 100% because you knew it, even though you didn't have it 100%. Everyone following what I'm saying? You got the train of thought? Okay. So the idea is like this: so when we talk about a knowledge, what we're talking about is accepting an evidence-based a claim based on evidence, as opposed to belief, which is accepting a claim despite lack of evidence or rejecting because of lack of evidence. And but when we talk about knowledge, we talk about evidence. The key to knowledge is never requiring or never needing 100%. All you need is enough that the alternative is unreasonable. Okay, let's try to take this a step farther. If we were to reframe this question more, a little bit more precisely, so then this question would be like this: there's a couple seats over here also. These are the scary seats. No one usually sits here. He's a brave man. The question would be like this: can we accept this? Can we categorize this event at Mount Sinai as a historical fact, or must we just call it a legend? Yeah. The real question is, we're really fine-tune what it is that we're trying to get at is: can we categorize this event at Mount Sinai as a historical fact, or must we just call it? Must we just call it a legend? A legend. Let's get some definitions over here. Can anybody give me an example of a legend? An example of a legend. Anyone? Yes. Say that again. King Arthur. Very good. Good. Great example. Anyone else? Another? Yes. Bigfoot. Good. Very good. Good example. How about this one? How about this one? George Washington and the cherry tree. George Washington and the cherry tree. For those of you who are not from America, those of you from Britain, so you may not know, it happens to be, it's important I tell you this, the first time I ever gave this class, which was many, many years ago, was to a group of British students. So I started out with my George Washington, the cherry tree, and they looked at me, no idea what I'm talking about. So rule number one in teaching is you always have to know your audience. But okay, George Washington and the cherry tree, the legend goes like this. When George Washington was our first president, when he was growing up, so apparently he had a cherry tree in his backyard. And one day he went outside with an axe, and he chopped down the tree. His father comes to him and says, "George, did you chop down the tree?" And George responded, "I cannot lie, it is I." And this was some type of great praise of George, which I never fully grasped. But okay, that's the story. Now, who can tell me? Yeah, do we know that this story ever happened? No. Do we know that it didn't happen? No. We don't know that it did happen. We don't know that it didn't happen. And that's actually what makes it a legend. See, a legend is a historical claim that we don't know whether it did or whether it did not happen. I don't have any problem saying it happened. I don't have any problem saying it didn't happen. I don't know. I don't have any evidence either way. And if I choose to believe it, so then I believed it. If I choose not to believe it, then I chose not to believe it. Yeah. And that's what that's what a legend is. A legend is a historical claim that has no evidence one or the other, and you can either choose to believe it or not. The only people who really know whether or not this event with George Washington happened are George and his father, and they are dead. So we cannot verify it. That's an example of a legend. And a legend is something that we either choose to believe or not. Now, who can give me an example of a historical fact? Anyone? An example of historical fact? Anyone? What?
Mount Sinai.
Well, that's, I don't know. Next, one that we're sure of. Yeah.
The United States made a country.
Okay, fine. Okay, excellent. Mayflower is good. How about the War of 1776? For those of you who are British, the War of 1776 is when we beat you! When we beat you! That's right! You lost! Anyway, so, yeah. Is any British people here? Darn it. Oh, yeah? Yeah, now you're all intimidated. Okay. Anyway, just making sure it's clear. Okay, but in any case, so now, what War of 1776 as revolutionary, what if I were to say to you, that I don't believe that war took place? What would you respond to me? Audience participation, please. What would you respond to me? What? We have a country, right? That's well, somehow America got started, yeah, right? And I would say to you, you're right. It happened in 1777, and there was no war. Next, anyone else? It's documented where? You don't know. Okay, in books. The books were all lies. Anyone else? Yeah, it's fun. What? For example, like artifacts, right? If you go on this is true. If you go on the East Coast, there are museums along the the original colonies where you could see artifacts from the Revolutionary War. And right, it's correct. Those were all fake. Those museums were all made up. They're not true. The artifacts are all they were made in Taiwan. Yeah. Yes.
Why would we lie about it?
Why? Yeah, people will lie about the darndest things. Okay, so now it's true that I'm giving you all alternatives, and yet even though I have given you alternatives to the fact that that the Revolutionary War didn't take place, you're not really buying it. You're not really buying it. And the reason is because my alternatives aren't reasonable. It's much more reasonable to accept the claim itself that the Revolutionary War occurred than to say that to say the alternatives. Are we together on this? Now, I'm telling you alternatives, and maybe my alternatives are true, but see, when it comes to knowledge and when it comes to history, maybes are not compelling, because maybes are a dime a dozen. I can tell you maybe your mom's not your mom. I could tell you maybe I'm going to kill you. And you're not compelled. Because while the maybes are maybes, maybes are a dime a dozen. And they're not compelling. And so when we're looking at claims, so we're not interested in maybes unless they're compelling. We're together on this? And when I'm telling you that the Revolutionary War didn't happen, it's much more compelling to accept that it did happen because there's evidence, whether it's the artifacts, whether it's the history books, whether it's that America got started, and that the claim of how America got started. I think it's very interesting that that it is true if you go around the world, everyone does agree with the Revolutionary, even the British who lost, agree, that that the Revolutionary War happened, and that's also quite compelling. Okay, so that's how about this? What if I were to tell you that I don't believe that the Holocaust happened? Let me just make sure we're on the same page. I'm pretty sure everyone in this room does agree the Holocaust happened. Okay, I don't. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Documented evidence. For example, like what? By the Germans. So let me try to put this in a way that doesn't sound. Jews.
Germans agree, though.
I'm explaining. Yeah. Jews have tons of money. Okay. Look at this building. Okay, tons of money, right? And so what did they do? So the Jews, they wanted to start Israel. So they went around and they basically paid off everyone for this claim. Well, try to get them to believe. Yeah, they do whatever they want. Yeah, but and they tried to get everyone. And until this day, in fact, the tattoos. Yeah, $1 million. Yeah, I make a tattoo for $1 million. Yeah, it's right. They all. It was all now. And I want to ask you something. Were you in the Holocaust? No. Was anyone in this room in the Holocaust? No. Right. So prove me wrong.
That's why would Germany give Israel money constantly?
They're not. No, they didn't give anything. No, it's all a lie. That was all part of it. That you have to say we give you money. Yeah, they didn't give any money.
Do you have proof to show they paid them all?
No. Yeah. What? Yeah. That's a fascinating point. Listen, basically every single country in Europe has some reason that tourists want to come, except for Poland. Okay, and they're like, what could we possibly do? And they heard that the Jews were, and they volunteered. We'll be the country who exterminated you, right? And so therefore, there's all these things were all built in the past 30 years. They built Auschwitz, Majdanek. It's all fake. These things are all fake, and just to increase tourism to Poland. Yeah.
Where did 6 million Jews go?
Nowhere. I don't think they're missing.
But Poland had 9 million Jews, or however many million Jews it was.
Brooklyn. Yeah.
6 million Jews.
The rest went the rest went to Miami, but that's it. Yeah. Okay. So just to make it clear, yeah, I do believe the Holocaust happened. But my point to you is that the fact that I can spin a maybe is not compelling. Because when the claim itself is more compelling than the maybe, we're willing to reject the maybe. And that's how we're going to analyze any historical claim. None of you are in the Holocaust, yet all of you are convinced it happened. So when we're talking about legends versus historical facts, so what we're really looking for, both of them we didn't see firsthand. So what we're always trying to look for is to see if the alternative claims are reasonable or not. When it comes to a legend, the alternative claims are just as reasonable as the claim. So you can either believe it or not. Yeah. When it comes to something that we're willing to accept as a historical fact, what we're going to do intuitively is try to say, well, if someone's claiming it didn't happen, how much sense does that make? And if the claim makes more sense than the alternative, we're willing to accept the claim, even though the alternatives are maybes. Right? Everyone with me over here? Okay. So if we're reframing this question that we started the class with, so the question is going to be like this. Can I categorize this event at Mount Sinai as a historical fact, or must I relegate it as a legend? Do I have enough evidence to know that this event at Mount Sinai occurred? That means not 100%, but enough that the alternatives are unreasonable. Yeah. Or must I simply call it a legend and either believe it or not believe it due to lack of evidence? Together on this? Good? Okay. Let's take the next step. I want to tell you a riddle. I'll let you think about the riddle, and we'll take it from there. The riddle goes like this. There was a king, and he was a wise king. He was a loving king. He was a powerful leader. The kingdom loved him. Every member of the kingdom always had a bit of a thought in the back of their mind. Well, what's going to happen when the king dies? Who's going to take over? The king had 3 sons. Each one of them had one of these wonderful qualities. One of the sons was very, very wise. One of the sons was very, very loving. One of the sons was a tremendous leader. And I remember members of the kingdom always wonder, who is going to take over for the king when his time comes to pass away? Well, the king died suddenly, and they didn't find any indication as to the king wanted to take over for him. The princes loved their father, and they loved the kingdom, and none of them wanted to assume the mantle of leadership because they didn't know if this is what their father would have wanted. So for months, the kingdom went without a king. Every morning, these princes would eat breakfast together. They would talk. They would reminisce before they would go about their day. One morning, they showed up, and one of the princes said to the other two princes, he said, I know who's supposed to be the next king. So the brother said, who, brother? Tell us. He said, me. They said, how do you know? He said, because last night I had a dream that my father came to me and said I'm supposed to be king. So now I'm telling you that I'm supposed to be king. Which the other brothers respond? The other brothers would respond. Yeah, the others respond and say, look, our father is wise. Our father is very, very smart. If our father wanted us to know that you were king, he would not go to you and tell you to tell us. What he would do is tell us that you're king. We must conclude that it was just a dream. It wasn't really our father. Okay. The rule of thumb when it comes to giving over messages is, and listen carefully to this, is that if you ever have a message to give, the worst way to do it is to tell someone to tell them. You know this in your life. If you ever want to get a message to somebody, the worst thing to do is to say, tell him to save me a plate of chicken, right? Go tell him yourself. Because once you got that middleman involved, you never know how the message is going to end. The rule of thumb, a smart thing to do, if you can get a message over, is never tell someone to tell someone your message. Always go tell, whoever's listening to this is going to go deaf. Yeah. Always go tell the person yourself. Now, I want to tell you something interesting. Listen carefully. Does anyone know how many known religions there have been in world history? Take a guess. And anyone? How many? No, that's a lot. 15,000. 15,000 known religions. Interesting. Of 15,000 known religions, all of them started by God going to somebody and asking him to relay a message to others that he's king, that he's God, etc., etc. All of them except for one. Judaism. Judaism started, what? Yeah, I can talk about that maybe afterwards. I can talk about that afterwards. Okay. That, except for Judaism. Judaism started by God revealing himself to everybody. Every other religion, we're talking about 14,999 religions, all started by God revealing himself to a person and telling that person, go tell everyone else that I'm God. Now, we ourselves just established that that's a very impractical and very unreliable way to give a message. If you ever want to give a message, the last thing you want to do is go tell someone to tell others your message. And now we have something interesting to think about. Why is that every single religion had God do the impractical thing? Why did every religion have God do the unwise thing? If I were starting a religion, I would have God do the smart thing. Yeah. If I was starting a religion, I would have God come and just talk to everybody. It's very fascinating. It's a question. I'll put this in our back pocket. It's very interesting that the way every religion claims that their religion started, except for Judaism, every single religion started by God doing the thing that you wouldn't have thought he would do. The thing that none of you would do. Why would a religion maker upper ever make his religion have God do something unreasonable? Have him do the most reasonable thing. Okay, let's put this on the side and let's try to progress. Now, what I want to do now is like this. Well, we're gonna pass this out as I am just giving you this introduction. This is a source sheet that you. There's some over here. There's some over here. There's some over here. I got to look for me. Here, pass this down. What we're going to do now is like this. We have we are trying to evaluate whether or not this event at Mount Sinai is a historical fact, can be categorized as a historical fact, or simply just a legend. So what we discuss is the way to evaluate historical facts is always to evaluate the alternatives. the claims, the alternative claims, alternatives to the claims, and to see if the alternatives are as reasonable as the claim itself. Now, when we talk about the Torah and Mount Sinai, and whether or not we can categorize that as a historical fact, there's basically four alternative claims. Any one that you could think of more than these four are really just branches that sort of fit into one of these four. There's basically four alternative claims of how this religion got started if it didn't get started the way we said it, the way Judaism claims it. Again, Judaism claims that the way the religion got started is that God presented the Torah in front of 3 million people on Mount Sinai. So if Judaism is accurate, then that's what happened. If Judaism was made up, so then that didn't happen. The question is, okay, so what's the alternative? There are four alternative claims as to how this religion started if this is not the way that it started. And now what we're going to have to do as logical, rational people is try to evaluate the alternative claims and see, are the alternative claims as reasonable as the claim itself? Everyone following the train of thought? I'll say it just one more time. We're over here trying to establish whether or not the event at Mount Sinai can be called a historical fact, or whether or not we have to relegate it to the category of legend. As we established, in order to know anything happened historically, we're going to have to evaluate our alternatives. If our alternatives are less reasonable than the claim, then we can accept the claim. On the side that the religion did not start the way Judaism claims, and that it did not start with the event of Mount Sinai, so there are four alternative claims, and I want to go through each one of them. I want to evaluate together, each one of us, how reasonable all are these alternatives. So let's start with the first one. The first one goes like this. The first alternative claim is that the way this religion got started was as follows. Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and he was holding a book. And he said to the Jews, "You are never going to believe what happened on that mountain. Unbelievable. God spoke to me. And he gave me this book." And he'd give them the book. What would happen? Now he's making it up, right? Again, there's an alternative. Moses made the whole thing up. The thing is a lie. God never spoke to him. He comes down from Mount Sinai and he claims, "God spoke to me and he gave me the book." What are they going to say when they start reading it? Okay, so let's open up the book. Let's look over here. This is from Parshas Yisro on the left. So we're going to read it in English, starting from the verse that's bracketed, the pasuk that's bracketed 16. Here, listen carefully. On the third day, when it was morning, there was a thunder and lightning and a heavy cloud on the mountain, and the sound of the shofar was very powerful, and the entire people that was in the camp shuddered. Moshe brought the people forth from the camp toward God, and they stood at the mountain at the bottom of the mountain. All of Mount Sinai was smoking because Hashem had descended upon it in a fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of the furnace, and the entire mountain shuddered exceedingly. The sound of the shofar grew continually much stronger. Moses would speak, and God would respond to him with his voice. What is this describing? The giving of the Torah. Well, if Moses just came down and gave them the book and said, "God spoke to me," when they start reading this, they're going to say, "Wait a second. This didn't happen." I'll try the whole question until the end because it's probably a good question. I'm probably going to get to it, so I want to try to package the whole thing. This didn't happen. This didn't happen. Let's keep reading. The entire people saw the thunder and the flames, the sound of the shofar and the smoky mountain. There's that next paragraph down. The people saw and trembled and stood from afar. They said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we shall hear. Let God not speak to us, lest we die." Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for in order to elevate you has God come, so that all of him shall be upon your faces, so that you shall not sin." The people stood from afar. Moses approached a thick cloud where God was. Hashem said to Moses, "So shall you say to the children of Israel, you have seen that I've spoken to you from the heavens." They're going to read this and say, "Wait a second. The book says that I heard God speak to me from a mountain. I didn't hear God speak to me from a mountain." Moses, this book is filled with lies. This book is filled with lies. Let's keep reading. This is from Bas Chanan over here, the third paragraph. Look at the bracketed verse 11, Pasuk Yud Aleph, on the left side in English. "So you approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain was burning with fire up to the heart of the heaven, darkness, cloud, and thick cloud. Hashem spoke to you from the midst of the fire, and you were hearing the sounds of words, but you were not seeing a form, only a sound. He told you of his covenant, that he commanded you to observe his 10 declarations, and he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets." They're going to say, "Moses, you gave us this book. We never heard him talk. This book claims we heard him talk. This book is full of lies. I'm not going to accept this book. You're lying to us. You're scamming us. You gave us a book that's filled with lies. You gave us a book that claims that we saw smoke going up to the heavens, we heard a loud shofar, we heard God speak to us, that we came to you and said, don't let him speak to us. This is all a lie. Moses, we're not going to accept a book that we know is filled with lies. We're not going to accept it. Let's keep reading. There's also from Bas Chanan over here. Last paragraph on this front page. Moses called all of Israel and said to them, "Hear, O Israel, the decrees and the ordinances that I speak in your ears today. Learn them and be careful to perform them. Hashem, our God, sealed a covenant with us at Charev. Now with our forefathers did Hashem speak this covenant, but with us, we who are here, all of us alive today, face to face did Hashem speak with you on a mountain from amid the fire." I'm going to read that last pasuk again. Listen carefully. Face to face did Hashem speak with you on a mountain from amid the fire. They're going to say, this book is not true. He did not speak to us. You came down from a mountain and gave me a book. Hashem did not speak to me from amid the fire. He did not speak to me at all. Can't accept the book. Can't accept the book. Let's turn to this back page over here on this uppermost paragraph on the left side. These words, Hashem, this is from Bas Chanan. These words Hashem spoke to your entire congregation on the mountain from the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the thick cloud, a great voice, never to be repeated. And he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me. And it happened that when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness and the mountain was burning in fire, that all the heads of your tribes and your elders approached me. They said, "Behold, Hashem our God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from midst of the fire. This day we saw that Hashem will speak to a person and he can live. But now, why should we die when the great fire consumes us? If we continue to hear the voice of Hashem, our God, any longer, we will die. For is there any human that has heard the voice of a living God and speaking from the midst of fire as we have and lived?" The book claims that God spoke to them, each one of them face to face. The book claims that there's a loud shofar that was increasingly getting louder. There's smoke going up to heaven. The mountain was on fire. The mountain jumped up and down. The mountain jumped up and down. If that didn't happen and Moshe gave them the book, they're going to look at it and say, "I can't accept this because Moses, you are scamming me," and they're not going to accept it. So if someone were to say that this is the way the religion got started, and we have to weigh what's reasonable and unreasonable, I think everyone will say this is pretty unreasonable. It probably didn't start this way. We're going to have to check out some of the other alternatives, obviously. But this is probably not the way it started. It probably just didn't come down from the mountain, just give it to them. And they were like, okay, it's filled with lies, but okay, no problem. We'll keep everything it says in it. They're probably not going to do that. I think we're going to want to try to look for another alternative. So let's look at another alternative. That was number one. Now let's try number two. How about this? It wasn't that Moses just came down and just, here's the book, and they read it, they're like, it's filled with lies, we'll accept it. No. Moses, he actually made the mountain jump up and down. And he made the loud voice. And he made smoke go up to the heavens. And he made a fire. And they all said, wow, okay, that's what it says. Yeah. And they believed it, and they bought into it, and that's how the religion started. Let's evaluate this. Let's evaluate this for a second. If I were to tell you that I am capable of making a mountain jump up and down and make a really loud voice to convince you as God, would you believe me? No, you wouldn't believe me. You'd say, I don't believe you. So why would you believe it I tell you Moses did it? That's a very unreasonable thing to assume. That's a very try to hold your questions, because I just want to present the whole picture. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. That's a very unreasonable. If I were to tell you I could do that, maybe if I were to tell you, but Rosa can do it. He's already someone who might be able to pull it off. But even him, remember Rosa, you can make a mountain jump up and down. So what if I had to tell you now, well, Moshe did it? He'd be like, what? Who can do that? Who can do that? And nowadays it's a bit more, I guess, reasonable, considering with the Hollywood and the movies and this, and you can maybe pull something like this off. But we're talking about in a desert. We're talking about, it was before electricity. How did he amplify his voice loud enough to convince them that they wouldn't just say, hey, Moshe, it's you! Hey, is that God? We're on to you! They're not, right? And they're all going to believe it. So again, this is an unreasonable thing to say. Might it have happened? I mean, maybe. But maybe the Holocaust didn't happen, and maybe the Revolutionary War didn't happen, and maybe your mom's not your mom, and maybe I'm going to kill you. Maybes are a dime a dozen. We don't accept maybes unless they're reasonable. To say that an individual was able to make a mountain jump up and down is an unreasonable thing. Maybe, okay, maybe, but the claim is more solid. Let's try to look for another alternative. How about this one? How about this one? Maybe try to hold your question. Yeah.
Just on the previous point, where does it say that the mountain jumps up and down?
Pasuk. in the first paragraph. And the mountain shuddered exceedingly. Yeah. You see it, right? Okay, it's in the first bracket in the 16. Jumping up and down was a bit of a shuddered. Yeah. Still, even Rebbe Rosen couldn't make a mountain shudder. Okay, let's progress. So how about this one? And this is maybe if you would have had this thought process, and right, maybe then you may have come up with this particular scenario of how the religion started. Let's try this one. How about this? Really, maybe there was no Moses, and there was no Mount Sinai, and there was no desert. There was none of that. The religion started at some point in history. It started at some point in history, and a person just started the religion. Let's go with this. You started the religion. Let's go with this. Before we analyze this particular alternative to the actual claim, I want to tell you a very interesting historical fact. In the 1400s, there was a massive flood that covered the entirety of Europe for a period of 6 months. Now, it wasn't from rain. It was from a glacier that melted in the North Pole and in a bit of a hotter summer months, and it flooded the entirety of Europe. For 6 months, the entirety of Europe lived in a cooperative state, which is really unparalleled, that they all worked together to create boats, snorkeling systems, that not one person died over the entire 6 months, despite the entire flood, the entire flooding. And when I say flood, I'm saying it was above every single house. Not one person died. Then ultimately, as the summer months approached once again, the water was able to evaporate, and Europe went on to living its regular European life. Now that I say this, what are you thinking? Why not? Why you say you don't believe, but why not? What's wrong? Maybe to say it a little bit better. Why have you never heard it? Right? Why have you never heard it? This is the type of thing that you would have assumed you would have heard, right? Even though, I don't know how many of you actually listened to during history class, but there are certain things that are going to stick with you, right? To hear that there was a great flood of Europe that flooded the entirety of Europe for a period of 6 months and not one person died is probably something that should have popped up in your history books at some point. And the fact that I just told you that something happened, and you're thinking, well, if that happened, I should have known about it, makes you wonder if I'm lying. You were together on this? Yeah? Right? And that's how we're going. That's one of our litmus tests for any historical claim. That one of the things we're going to do intuitively, because we're intelligent people, is, wait a second, is that something I should have heard of? Because if it is and I didn't, that makes me wonder if the claim is true. Together on this? Okay. So now let's analyze our third alternative. Let's paint the following scene. Bill is walking through the shuk one day holding a scroll. Fred comes up to him and says, "Bill, what's that scroll?" Bill says, "Oh, Fred, I'm glad you asked. Come to my house tonight, midnight." So midnight comes. Fred comes and knocks on the door. Bill opens it up, dressed in all white. Sits him on the floor, candles all around, pulls out the scroll. He says, "Fred, let me tell you something. This scroll was written by God. And it was in front of 3 million people. He gave it to humanity. And it was passed on from generation to generation. It got forgotten. I'm the only one who remembers. And you are a descendant." What do you think Fred is going to say? Fred is going to say, wait a second. God gave a scroll to humanity and nobody remembers it? Yep. He's going to question whether or not that's actually true. I find it very hard to believe that Fred at that point is going to say, really? So what does it say? Circumcise? Great! Where's the razor blade? Yeah, let me circumcise. It says I have to circumcise myself. Excellent! I'm not going to say that. Yeah. This book says can't eat his favorite foods anymore. He has to divorce his wife probably. Okay, maybe that's not so bad. But yeah, all of it, he's going to accept it so quick. See, you can convince people of a lot of things. But one thing you can't convince people of is that God revealed himself to an entire nation and everyone forgot about it. What's my proof? My proof is that 14,999 religions started when didn't claim that. That's a much better claim. Like we said, it's a much better claim. If I were making up a religion, I would much rather say that God appeared to everybody, because that's a logical thing to do. If you got a message to give it to the person. Don't tell it to someone else and tell someone else. So why is it that in all the religions, not one, no religion besides Judaism started with God revealing himself to the entire nation? The reason is because no one's going to believe it. No one's going to believe it unless it happened. Now, I want to tell you something more. Listen carefully to this. I'll take questions. I just want to finish up the package. I'll tell you something more. Christianity, so their claim is that Judaism, that God changed his mind. God changed his mind, and he rejected the Jews, and he chose them. So I have a question for you. Why didn't Christianity claim that God made another national revelation? No. What? We're doing... Rewrite the script. Yeah? Starting again. Yeah? Another national... Why didn't you do that? I'll tell you why. Because no one's going to believe it. You can't pull that off. You can't claim that God appeared to everyone. Yeah, it's a much better thing to say. It's a much better thing to say. Islam claimed that that God could change his mind again. Yeah? So I would have thought now there's another reasonable to do is that God would appear on a mountain again and say, yeah, take 3. We're doing this again. Yeah? And have another national revelation. Why did neither of them? They should have claimed the national revelation. The first was a national revelation. God should have changed his mind in 2 more national revelations. He didn't, because no one's going to believe you. Because you can't make that up. You can't say that God appeared and somehow no one really knows about it. And I want to tell you something even more. Judaism is a very hard sell. Like I said, if you were to come and tell this crazy claim that God appeared on a mountain in front of 3 million people and no one and no one remembers about it, so that's a hard thing to believe. But it's certainly a hard thing to believe when it comes to all types of things, like closing your store on Shabbos and having a circumcision and all the various types of things. It's a very hard sell. Very hard sell. Christianity, they didn't claim a national. So what did they do? They had a very easy way of getting people. First of all, Christianity's a simple sell. You have someone to come up to you and say, "Listen, I'm a prophet. God came to me and said you don't have to keep the Torah anymore." I'd be like, tell me more, right? That's a very easy sell. That's a very easy sell. And what's more is Christianity went through and they just, all of Europe, and they just killed anyone who didn't believe in them. And that's basically how Christianity started. Judaism came with a crazy claim that God revealed himself on a mountain. Yeah, it's got a book that is extremely hard to keep. And what's more than that is that not only do we not kill anyone who doesn't believe in us, if they want to try to convert, we try to push them away. We are not intermissionizing at all. This is very, very hard to see how this religion started if it didn't start the way that we said. Yeah. Now, also something to keep in mind and something to appreciate, and listen carefully to this, is that almost more than half of the world does believe that God appeared on Mount Sinai. Right? Christians believe it. Muslims believe it. The only group that's really having trouble accepting it is like the Jews. Like the Jews aren't so sure, right? But the Christians believe it, the Muslims believe it. The Jews aren't. This is because it is a very, very hard thing to say didn't happen, and it's a very hard thing to say was made up. Right? So now we've evaluated our third claim. Our third claim is that it started at some point in history. Also, just to point out historically, if anyone here is a bit of a historian, we have already historical records that Judaism was around already in the first temple, right? So we're talking about what? No, historians agree that there was a Jewish religion. No, not that there was Jews. Yeah. No, what? Oh, you're going back on what I said? According to you guys, you believe historians. We do. Everyone agrees there was a Jewish people, right, around in the time of the first temple. Yeah. That means that there was only about 13 generations, right, that this lie could have been made up. 13 generations means you figure out 3. You have father, son, father. You're talking about 3 generations usually live at the same time. It's a very hard thing to say that it was made up and forgot that this was forgotten about in such a short amount of time. It's a very hard thing to buy, very hard thing to say. So now we've evaluated our third claim over here, and that is that this was started at some point in history. And if it was started at some point in history, again, we're going to have to wonder if indeed it was started at some point in history. So we're going to have to accept the fact that people believed in a national revelation. And if it's so easy to pull it off and it's so easy to do, so then why did no one else do it? It's a much better claim. Okay, let me do the fourth scenario, then we'll wrap it up, then I'll start on for questions. I just want to conclude. The fourth one is like this. Maybe when this... Actually, let me just point out one more thing, sorry, before we get to the fourth one. We're short on time, so I'm not going to read this paragraph, but you should read this paragraph. This is the last paragraph on the second side. The paragraph says, Hashem is talking to future generations, which I guess is us, yeah? He's talking to future generations, and he says the following thing. This is the Torah itself. This is Parashat Vaschan, and Hashem says, look in the future, you will see that no group ever claimed a national revelation that the Torah says. No one will ever claim that God spoke to a group. Now that happens to be true. There has never been a claim of national revelation besides the Jews. That happens to be true. But I want to ask you a bigger question. Besides the fact that it happens to be true, and that's pretty impressive, if God didn't write the Torah, if some man did, why would he put this in there? This is a really dumb thing to put in because what if another national revelation happens? Yeah? Then you're toast. The whole thing's not true, right? You just pulled it off, right? You got everyone to believe in national revelation, right? It's good, they bought into it. Isn't this the worst thing to do is to write it here? No one else is ever going to do it. You just did. How do you know no one else is going to do it? It's very interesting that the author had the guts to write that no one else were going to do it. That's a very, very interesting thing. Okay, let's get to our fourth scenario, and this will conclude. The fourth one goes like this: that maybe when the religion started, it started some point in history. Some man just started it, and initially it did not have any discussion of national revelation in it at all. Let's say the Torah was. Let's say that all 30 verses about national revelation were not included in the original Torah. Yeah, and it was just basically a book of morals and a book of stories, and a group of people bought into it. And then once you had that group, they introduced the concept of national revelation. And that was introduced much later on. Meaning, you're right. You didn't start the religion by saying, yes, God appeared to 3 million people and everyone forgot. Yeah, you're right. No one's going to believe that. You say, look, God gave the Torah to me. He spoke to me. And he wanted me to tell you, and you got people, just like every other religion, they got people to believe it. And then at a later stage, they introduced the national revelation, sort of stuck it in the Torah. Let's analyze this for a second. I want to ask you a question. Do you think it would be that simple, just to add 30 verses that describe national revelation into the Torah? I mean, what would you expect to happen knowing Jews, right? What would you expect to happen? You're going to have the people who say, you can't do that. This is from God. You can't just stick 30 verses in there. And you have them to say, no, it really happened, right? And you're going to have two groups in Judaism. You'll have the revelationists, who believe in the revelation, and you have the non-revelations who claim that no, it went to this one individual who gave it, right? And you're going to have two different Torahs, one Torah that doesn't have revelation in it, and one that does have revelation in it. That's what we would expect. It's very, very hard. That's what we'd expect. You'd expect that historically speaking, there'd be some discussion about a group of people who didn't believe in revelation, but who believed in the Torah went to one man. We don't have any evidence of any of this. Zero, nothing. There's no two groups. There's no group that says that there was initially. I'm making up something that no one ever claimed. No one ever claimed that there was a time period in Judaism with Jews that claimed that God gave this to a man and that it didn't have revelation in it. That 30 psukim in the Torah just got slipped through with no one noticing is totally unreasonable. And there was no splinter groups. There was no fights. There was no disputes. There was no two different traditions. There was none of that. We don't have any evidence to any of that, and that's certainly not something that if there's anyone who starts going on a different, it usually becomes a big fight. We don't have any evidence of any of that. It's a very unreasonable claim, considering history itself doesn't ever say that this happened. So now we had four alternatives as to how this religion started if it did not start the way that we thought it would, the way that we claim it does. We discussed the fact that Moses just came down from a mountain and said, here's the book. They're going to read it and say, well, that's, it's filled with lies. Or that Moses actually faked the entire Mount Sinai event with the mountain shuddering and the smoke up to heavens and the fire. Yeah, that's a very unreasonable thing. To say it got started sometime in world history and that you convince people national revelation happened is a very, very hard thing to claim. And the fourth, that the national revelation verses got stuck in at a later date is a very hard thing to accept. And if so, what we're left with is as follows: that all the alternatives of how this religion got started are unreasonable. Could they happen? Maybe. But the Revolutionary War also might not have happened. The Holocaust might not have happened. It could be that your mom's not your mom, and it could be I'm going to kill you. But we don't take maybe seriously if they're unreasonable. When it comes to the Torah, so now we have four alternative scenarios that are all unreasonable, and logic now dictates that this event indeed did occur, that we can know it occurred, and that we can categorize it as historical fact. And then our original question really becomes something like this. It's not, can I believe in this event and still be a rational person? Really the question is, can I deny this event and still be a rational person? Okay, everyone, I'm done. Please give me a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. Rabbi Rosen, do I have time for? I do I have time for questions? It doesn't have to. Yeah, I have time for. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you had a question in the back. Yeah.
Okay, so first, Christians do say that Jesus had walked on water.
I totally believe it. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with an individual doing miracles.
No.
I don't have a problem that he did. I have a problem with God revealing. I don't have a problem with Jesus doing miracles in front of millions of people. There's nothing irrational to me about that.
So you would support such a claim?
I don't have any problem with it. If it was true, it was true. I don't have a problem with a man doing a miracle in front of a lot of people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I have a problem, and I have a problem claiming.
The reason why the divine revelation would be a problem is because you wouldn't exactly have the fear after divine revelation. No?
I'm confused.
If God came to you and said,
Are you asking, does this have anything to do with our topic tonight?
what?
Are you asking a question on our topic tonight?
No, the counter argument for why God would not appear to an entire nation and say,
I'm saying the book says he did. So the book says he did. So if you're believing in Bechira and you're believing in all this, so then, I mean, you can't dance with, say chasanas.
even the Mepharshim speak about Moshe didn't come down with an entire Torah and give it to all the fathers.
Over the 40 years he did. Over 40 years. Over 40 years he did.
What?
Over 40 years he did.
In the desert. So certain parts of the Torah will compile later, correct?
Within 40 years, that's still that doesn't that's not a.
The Torah is claiming that the entire generation died out. So why
Not clear.
would it be so substantial to make that claim to a different?
That they heard from their parent. I hear what you're saying, but you have to think about it. They heard everything from their parents. It's not. We're not talking about. I find no problem with this. The fact that the Torah went from generations from father to child, that doesn't take away any of the substance of anything that I'm saying tonight. I want you to think about this a little bit. I mean, I'm happy to hear your questions more, but why does it take? Still, they're going to read it and they say, "Mom never told me about it." What you're claiming is like this: is that you're right. The first generation that saw the actual event, right? They didn't really see the event, but after everyone died, Moshe's like, "By the way, you should know." That's what you're saying. After they all died, he said, "You should know." They all saw this, just didn't tell you about it. That's a very unreasonable thing to claim. What you're saying is that the event Har Sinai never occurred, right?
Moses was the leader. It wouldn't be such a.
So then why didn't it? Yeah, it's not such a crazy thing. So why in 14,999 religions did it not happen?
What?
Why, if it's not so crazy, you would have seen it happen again at least once.
Well, you have people claiming that many people, that God revealed them, that Jesus claims that he walked on water for 40 people.
We just went over this.
What?
We just went over this. I don't have a problem with someone doing a miracle in public. That doesn't bother me. What I do have a problem with is people claiming that God revealed himself to 3 million people and nobody remembers it. That's a very unreasonable thing to claim. I have no problem with someone claiming he did a miracle in front of people. I think that's very reasonable. I don't have any questions on that. I do if someone came up to me and said that God revealed himself to 3 million people and nobody remembers it. I don't have a problem with miracles. You're missing my point. I believe in miracles. I don't believe that history forgets.
This religion had attraction way before Mount Sinai. We had Abraham controlling people left and right, correct?
I'm not sure where you're going with this. Did you hear my point tonight?
What?
Did you hear my point tonight? How did the religion start? I want you to think about it. How did religion start?
So we're saying that the first source for Jewish religion is not the Torah. You're going that the Torah is the first source of the Jewish religion. It's not the Torah.
I don't think I ever said the Torah's. I don't think I said that tonight.
What?
I didn't say that.
What?
I said that there's a claim that God appeared to 3 million people. If that didn't happen, how did people accept it? That's all I said. You're getting very religious on me. I told a secular. I don't get frustrated. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that I don't know how you get a group of people to believe something that's crazy. I couldn't get you to believe that the entire Europe was flooded. There's not a religious thing. I'm just saying that historically speaking, this is not something that has ever happened. That someone can claim that God appeared to 3 million people and everyone forgot. No other religion has ever done it. How did anyone pull that off is a question. I'm not talking about Abraham, forget him. I'm saying historically speaking, we have an anomaly. There aren't such things as historical anomalies. History repeats itself, and that's a rule of history. So you should have had at least one other religion that claims that God appeared on front of a group of people. We don't have anything like that. So why? Because no one's going to believe it. So how did Judaism pull it off? That's the argument.
Your argument is that the fact that it's such
Yeah.
the fact that it's such an irrational claim automatically makes it true.
No, that's not at all, actually. I think you missed it again. The fact that it's such a crazy claim means that it probably wasn't a claim at all. It actually happened. Okay. That's what I'm saying. That's very logical. Since it's... Yeah, you had a question over here? Yeah.
Isn't that essentially what Ezra, Sofer, and the Sanhedrin did?
No, I'm not sure what you're saying. Explain better.
When like almost the entire nation was not observing Torah and didn't remember it, and they kind of brought everyone back.
I'm saying not essentially. There was certain parallels, and the story is a very different story.
No,
They didn't. They weren't. It's just very similar to what happened now. People were assimilated.
Isn't that the alternative theory of seed?
It wasn't they never heard of Torah before. They knew is that they were assimilated, similar like to what's going on in the world now. And there was a makari of them, but it wasn't that there was a totally right. They knew of this idea, they just didn't know Torah. It was an assimilated world, but it wasn't like a totally absurd idea that like really Judaism what? It wasn't like that. It just didn't know anything. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
Since like you said, there's no like hard like there's no like we don't have any definitive evidence.
To what?
To tell us how it's gonna happen.
I just gave it.
I'm saying like a Christian or an atheist still would say that no, it didn't happen. They don't like
Christians believe it totally. An atheist, you're asking. An atheist has much bigger issues with not believing in God. Atheists are the easiest people to deal with. No, on an intellectual level. Emotionally, they have all types of problems. But intellectually, it's very atheism is totally not substantiable.
there are religions. I think there are religions that would say that it didn't happen. Like,
What didn't happen?
Har Sinai didn't happen. Even though we
No, I agree. I'm not saying that every religion says Har Sinai happening. I'm saying how did this claim get started if it didn't happen? That's all I'm saying. You're right. There's plenty of people who didn't hear this class. You know, we're trying to teach the world. Thank you very much. If anyone has questions, you can come up.